Okay. There we are.
So all of a sudden it's going to be like, I'm going to call this meeting to order, and then there goes my hair.
Hair raising meeting. Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the Clay County Commission to order. We will start with our invocation. Mr. Administrator, when you are prepared, please proceed.
Pray with me. Father, on this Flag Day, we are so very grateful for this flag to which we are under. We appreciate, Father, all those that have given their lives in service to protect that flag in this country, as well as those who survive. We ask your blessing, Father, in your presence in this meeting. We ask this all in Jesus' blessed name. Amen.
Please rise for the pledge. Thank you, and that is, of course, all the more appropriate, being today is, of course, Flag Day. With that, please, also I'm going to make one other quick announcement before we move to roll call, and that is we appear to be somewhat less formal. For those of you watching, we're having a little bit of an issue with the air conditioner, so being in our shirt sleeves is not always the way we work things, but we are making certain concessions to the climate. With that, please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Here.
That brings us to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion related to the approval of today's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Motion's been made for the approval of today's meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Carpenter?
No, thank you.
Very well. In that case, Commissioner Thompson, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to meeting schedule. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, we have two meetings scheduled, an executive session later today, this afternoon, and the regularly scheduled commission work session this week on Thursday, June the 17th at 10 a.m.
Thank you. Honorary resolutions, there are none listed for today's meeting. We have one item under discussion item, bond budget review. Mr. Administrator, if you'd like to say anything to get us started on that, we'll get going.
Sure. This is a result of a series of meetings that have taken place within county leadership having to do with the various bond projects that are either underway or anticipated. The meeting here today is for folks that are involved in those projects to give the full commission some exposure to those projects, not only what the projects are, but the anticipated cost. Priority setting is the intent, and that's what this entire meeting is about.
Thank you very much. Before we get started, are there any comments or questions from the commission?
No, thank you.
Very well. With that, we'll just go ahead and jump right in. Mr. Counselor, if you'd like to go ahead and jump start us on this, we'll get going.
Thank you, Commissioner. So let me give you just a little bit of background. About a month ago or so, maybe 6 weeks ago, the auditor, the county administrator, and myself started having some conversations about what we need to be doing with the COP money that is unexpended, because there's an enormous amount out there. And so we had some staff meetings. I think we had two of them where we
Could
really
you speak just a little more into
is
the
it,
mic?
yeah, where we went through some of the projects and what is really unexpended, to try to get a sense of those items that we've not spent money on, what projects are still needed, what projects maybe aren't needed, and go through it, because and we're all going to kind of work from this same document. And the bottom line to me is, if you look at the kind of the brown box with the small darker brown box, we have about $33.5 million of money that is in the COP that is unexpended. And that's really what we need to talk about, is what we want to do with that, what you want to do with that. And I also want to say that The auditor's office has been extraordinarily helpful with this, as has the county administrator's office. The group that's worked on this, I mean, a lot of these are going to be Donna and Carl telling you what we do need, what we don't need, and walking through the projects and making recommendations for you guys to consider. The group really, I thought, did a fantastic job of doing that. Purchasing group, the contracts group, everybody worked really well on this. And I think it's now time, I hope, for the commission to get a sense of where we are and what we want to do in this. And I thought maybe I'll kind of turn it over to Victor to maybe explain, because you can probably guess these numbers aren't mine this time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor, and good morning, Commission. Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. I just want to say I appreciate being part of this process. As we know, since the adoption of these, as we call them, bonds, certificates of participation in 2018, there really hasn't been that much by way of financial oversight in 2019 and 2020 as far as reviewing for, as I'm required by my duties and obligations, for enough cash and budget for expenditures and to review expenditures. So this is an opportunity for that, should the commission decide to keep those bonds. In fact, we have certified and contracted to that extent as far as bond monies, and we'll indicate that in this document. So without further ado, let's go straight to the document and just give you kind of a overall picture. As Council said, we have $33 million left. What this summary tab shows you, your first page, Commissioners, on the column there you have your current balance, and this is from the former administration's list that was never approved by the Commission, of what they thought might be appropriations for various projects. And it's grouped by category, project number. And then you have a column with staff recommended budget. That is, as Council referred to, the budget team got together in May a couple times, as well as numerous conversations beyond that, to come up with adjustments to that former lists, and then including requests from previously excluded departments like courts, sheriff's office, airport, juvenile, and add those if the commission so sees fit to continue to use these bonds. And what we ultimately came up with was more asks than what we have available. Those are when we look at 14, 15, 16. But through this process, we ultimately identified some ways to balance that, which I will get to. The commission-approved budget indicates those amounts which we have committed to by way of resolutions, contracts this year, or work already started and orders made and invoices forthcoming. So that's something we should consider. Of that $33 million, I will get to eventually on page 5. We consider $27.8 million unencumbered, so to speak, with $5.6 million under contract, and that's mostly your bridge projects and conveniently the HVAC today. Yes, the total of the commission-approved budget column. So, and then at the very bottom, the gray box just gives you kind of a large overview snapshot of the breakdown by department and function as far as what's been expended. 20% parks, more than doubled in annex payments so far. Staff recommendations, after making changes to the former list, and new recommendations, and then the total once combined. So with that summary page, let's go ahead and get into the next tab on the project detailed listing. This begins on page 2 of your handout, and it runs all the way through to page 5, so pages 2 through 5. And at the top of page 2, if you could go back there to the top of the page, you can see we have 35% expended, that 18.6, so that gives you at the top there those overall summary figures. I just want to make some notes about this before we open it up to presentations from the deputy administrators. First of all, the highlighted in yellow are going to be those projects we have started contracts or started projects. So we have highlighted those, called them out. In the gray highlighting are going to be those former projects from the prior administration that new administration, deputy administrators determined we would not like to proceed with. And of course, that's up to the commission. If you want to pull one out or discuss one further, please do. We are being fully transparent with you today, and we appreciate the opportunity to review these bonds. Another thing I'll make note of is in purple highlights, we have noted projects that are eligible under the American Rescue Plan Act to be spent under that fund instead of by bonds. Those are mostly dealing with stormwater projects at the lake, lagoons, and dredging projects. That amounts to roughly $2.6 million, as noted there. So that can be removed and help us balance this request, overall request, if we in fact decide to keep all the bonds. Deputy Administrator Walters can speak that there are even more opportunities besides this list for that same water and sewer infrastructure category for the county as a whole to spend those dollars. So those are the main notes. Again, in summary, we started with a $33.4 million balance. The budget team reduced that, found $9.5 million. We got $14 million in requests, but there are ways to balance that. And we can get to those after we have the presentation, but I don't want to take any more time from the deputy administrators. Ultimately, what we're going to do is run by project number in the groupings. As you can see, the 1s, 2s, 3s, and so forth. And I guess I'll turn it over to council and presiding commission.
And I think if everybody's ready,
I'd like to go ahead and just kind of make sure everybody on the commission is got it doesn't have any questions about the actual, how the documents are structured first, so we'll go
Okay.
through that.
Sure.
And first off, I want to say that I appreciate, and I think the other commissioners as well, appreciate the hard work of the staff, obviously, which includes the 3 individuals at this table, and a lot of other people have been working very hard to put this together. I think we're also unanimous in our appreciation of the auditor now being able to exercise the oversight role, which is part of his job. The fact that this was not done prior to this, I think, is a failing that would fall on the former commission, not on the present commission or on the staff. So I think that's something we are really grateful for. I had just one real quick question. You were mentioning about the highlighted purple. And by the way, this is another thing that is really, I think, an advantage of what we're doing is that the auditor is taking a leading role as we analyze the possible uses of the federal monies that are coming down. My question is there a high level of confidence that those highlighted in purple will in fact comply, because you've been following the rules closer than anyone in the building? Do you feel very comfortable that those projects that are highlighted in purple will in fact fall into that other category?
Yes, certainly, and thank you for the question. We reviewed the FAQs from the U.S. Treasury Department for the American Rescue Plan Act, as well as the interim final rule, pages 2,600, 802 to 3 of the interim final rule, and 16 of the FAQ 6.1, which discuss specifically those stormwater projects. My understanding, Deputy Administrator Walters can speak more of this, and Kuntz, that these dredging projects are essentially to prevent kind of flooding dam type issues at Smithville Lake. So this would qualify. I'll note that you do not have to get pre-approval from these projects, and stormwater is one of the categories for that. So yes, we feel confident that this would be eligible under the rescue plan.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions from the other commission members, so with that, we'll go ahead and proceed. I believe, Mr. Counselor, you were getting ready to speak.
Thank you, Commissioner. So just real quick on process, I've got about 10:20. I think for some personal commitments, for others, we want to try to break around noon, maybe a little after, but not much, and because we're coming back at 2. Is that correct? for everybody? Okay. And so the idea would be to start on page 2, have the assistant administrators go through the projects that apply to them, and just give you information on what the project is, and then a recommendation perhaps, and or answer questions. The one thing I would suggest respectfully is that we pass on today. We may have to come back and do this again to finish up. I'm not sure how far we'll get. I don't think we should talk about a potential new annex project today. I think that is a much bigger discussion. I think we probably should focus on all these other items that, to be honest, none of us have really talked about. I mean, we don't really know. And so that would be my recommendation. We probably could take the entire time talking just about the new annex, and I'm not sure we'd get anywhere. But I really do feel that a lot of these other projects, we can give you good information that you can use to make decisions about whether they should be funded or not funded. Does that seem like the right approach for everybody?
I think you're right. We do need to get through here. Further, I would maybe recommend, although if somebody has a question at the point something's being brought up, that we maybe try to ask our questions as a group. In other words, ask all of our administrative building questions at the end of the presentation of the deputy administrator. Although if there is a question that should be asked, certainly we don't want to cause any lack of ability to ask questions, but it might be a little more efficient if it is practical to ask those questions at the end of each section. But I'm quite prepared to recognize any commissioner who has any question or comment as we go along. With that,
You ready to start, Donna?
Yes,
So
thank you.
So go ahead and start on 1-1 and just keep going.
Donna Kuntz, Deputy County Administrator. And you want me to actually do them by line item, 1.1?
I think that'd
Okay.
be easier.
All right, we are going to close the project for new boilers. New doors are for the north side of this building. They are historic doors, so we are working now to find a way to replace the north side property doors, but they must fit the historic guidelines. The new HVAC system, this is a 1985 unit. As we can all tell by having to stand here under fans, that it is a needed project. It has been started. It has been placed on order. And again, a lot of these projects were from previous administrations, so we are not in need of replaced windows. The repairs to the admin building ceiling has been made. And that kind of concludes the first part of admin. The second part, 2.1, server room upgrades, actually refers to their Schrader building. With the newer equipment we have, it has reduced the heat load, and therefore a new server room is not needed at Schrader. However, they do need a roof, and we had asked to replace that money, that funding, to go towards a roof for the Schrader building.
And if I could jump in there, apologize. Just so everyone's clear, the way this is structured, when we have, as the deputy administrator just referenced, a new project request, we do have separate tabs for those, and those are at the back. And we can do those after we get through the old ones or the existing ones, however we want to do it. But those are on pages 6 and 7, respectively, just so we're all aware. Okay.
And so, Donna, on 1.3, on the HVAC system, the way I think I'm reading it, that's already been budgeted and approved. Is that right?
Yes,
And
that
so-
was early on. I'm going to say we probably started that around maybe March, sizing and getting ready for this project, because it is, again, a very needed project. And there have been many discussions and changes as where how we're dealing with this, our funds. But yes, that one has already been started, and the equipment has been ordered for this project.
Okay. So we're not looking, you're not necessarily, since it's been approved, there's no direction needed on that one. And the doors you think are completely necessary for this building?
The doors will not stay in alignment currently. Anyone that uses the north doors, there is a loud popping noise. We can only fix it temporarily for a couple of doors. We can put a couple of days, we can put it back in alignment, but then the 10th person that goes out, the door is back to popping. So we are looking at that. Or my other suggestion is then when we do budgets this year, we make sure that goes and moves forward to the 2022 budget.
Okay. And is Kevin here about, do we have any comments on the server room upgrade and the need for that? He was, okay. Because I think that was one of them that was more on his. Okay. So,
Our IT manager, Kevin Shaw, had deferred those funds at a previous meeting, stating that the server room, we used to have a heat load capacity issue. With newer equipment, we have able to more modernize our computer equipment, and therefore we don't have the problem we have with keeping the equipment cool.
okay. And then, okay, so I think we're now down to subsection 3. 3, 1, 2, and 3 are all about the annex, or at least the new annex, and then is 3, 2 is the current annex, correct?
That is correct. That is for a roof that is being placed. It is being put on as we speak.
Okay, so again, that has already been budgeted and approved to go forward?
That is correct.
Okay. And then what about the parking lot? That's also for that one?
Yes, and that actually falls under Deputy County Carl Walters.
Deputy Director of Administrations, Carl Walters. The parking lot was assessed at this amount to turn around and just do a Band-Aid repair, which would be a good Band-Aid repair for that parking lot, which is actually needed to do a little bit of asphalt cutting, work around the storm drain and the entryway to the parking lot to make it more safe for people and residents that are coming in and out of that annex.
Is there any idea of, in that project, expanding the number of parking spaces, or would it be pretty much status quo as far as the amount of parking?
Just status quo.
Okay. Then the Franklin building is 3, 4, 5, and 6. That has been purchased. I think the HVAC is in motion as we speak and approved and budgeted.
That is correct.
And then the only other thing was $5,500 on the roof. And you think that's a necessary expenditure? I know it's not that big of an expenditure.
Yes, just to stop some water filtration, some soffits that need to be replaced.
Okay. And then so I think we're down to 4, and this is almost all of 4 and 5. So several of the next sections are all parks.
Let me see if does anybody on the commission have any questions or comments on where we've been so far? Okay, please proceed.
So who's handling parks?
It's divided by sections.
That's what I thought. Okay. Does anybody want to just start with?
I'll start with 42T.
4.2.
Because 41T, the zebra mussels, I don't believe that's in play right now. Questioning. Install 42T is install material pads for sand and gravel for the golf course. That way we don't have to turn around and put it out into the asphalt where the residents come in to play golf. That's where we're dumping it right now because we need to stay clean. We can't put it in the gravel as far as the sand goes. So that's kind of a area to make sure that we keep our sands clean for the areas that like our roughs and stuff like that, the sand pits. The intake pipe pump housing, that price on that intake is just to put a Band-Aid on that. If we put a Band-Aid on that, that means that they're going to put a sleeve on it, and then it's going to reduce the intake of the water, which will make the pumps work harder. And I apologize, I recently got a bid from an engineer late Friday to tell us that if we was to do it correctly to keep the volume of the water for the irrigation was $100,000 a piece. But this $80,000 is to 2 pump houses to just put a Band-Aid on them. As you see, the utility cart, the bunker rakes are all closed. Repair concrete pads for the paths. They are broke up. They have deterioration on them. They've been there for a while. It would be nice to bring those back up to standards so that we don't have any trips or falls or anything from the cracks, the potholes, you know, the things of the weathering and stuff of the concrete pad stuff. It kind of help out there on the golf course where you're, the areas where you're teeing off.
So-
they have to pull into.
Is that 25,000? What does that actually get us? Is that just spot fixing, or is that some?
Yeah, that's areas. Some places are good. Some places on the not 18-hole areas where you tee off of it is bad.
Okay.
So I mean, we're gonna stay with the good stuff, but the bad stuff we're gonna have to turn around and fix. It's Band-Aids.
So, when I looked at this, there are certain things that I felt were like capital improvements, bigger items that maybe needed to be done, and this kind of money would be a good fit for it. But something like this, wouldn't this typically be done out of just annual budget?
Yes, we could actually do it out of annual budget.
Okay.
Yeah, we could budget it for the 2022 budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of information you guys would like to hear? about
That's-
what
that's
could-
exactly-
What
Yeah.
could be done in a regular budget cycle as opposed to something that maybe can't as easily?
Yeah, I think, and I'd welcome the comments of the other commissioners on this, but yeah, my thought is that the money we're talking about expending out of the COP bond money is money that we will in fact be paying interest on, and it's going to cost more if these are projects that we can work into a regular budget project. It's more appropriate. And to tell you the truth, this is money we're paying interest on for 20 years.
Yep.
Very few of the items we have have a 20-year life, particularly when we get to some of these that have a relatively short lifespan or constant need repair. That does not strike me as a very good expense for COP money, and much more appropriately put in our regular budget. Do any of the other two commissioners have any comments on that?
No, I agree.
Okay. Please, thank you. That is a good question. And by the way, I appreciate you sort of, doing point on this. Go ahead.
As spin grinder for the reels, as you said, we could probably put that into the 2020 budget.
And can you explain what that is? Just generally what that is for the commissioners?
Spin grinder for the reels is a unit for the reel mowers to grind, keep them sharp. So every time they go out there and do the greens and stuff like that, then they come back in and they have to make sure that they stay razor sharp to get a clean cut on their greens.
Okay.
Is actually what it means. So resurface putting green asphalt, I believe that is closed. Now we're to the resurface of all asphalt cart paths. That is actually to do repairs to the area. That's not to replace any and all. That is just to go through and repair asphalt that is popped up, potholes in it, sunken down, taken on water, build it back up, and do a little bit of sealing, tar sealing over the areas so that we can keep them up.
And again, that potentially could be something done in a regular budget
We
cycle?
could actually put that in a regular budget in the following years.
Okay.
Well, the other thing is on that, because $200,000 is obviously a substantial amount of money, if I'm reading across correctly, is that something that'd be done in phases, so we could do some of it, the more?
We can do a little bit at a time, yes.
So it could be spread out over multiple budget years?
Yes,
Okay.
it could be as well. Now we're to the replace the irrigation. Those projects are all done. And then we're to the replacement of the carpet at the pro shop. Donna and I did a assessment on that, and we recommended that it would be best that not spend that money, just to clean the carpet would be best for the pro shop up there. And the zoysia sod stripping is already, partially been done, but then we still have just a tad little bit that we need to finish up on.
And then I think we agreed that anything that was going to be a new ask, let's go to that at the end and focus on what is already in here.
Taking place.
Because it'll be harder to understand what the right way to handle the money is until we've gone through some of those. James Farm, so section. Does anybody have any questions on 4?
No, we have none?
Okay, the James Farm cabin renovations, we can disregard this. We've already started this project. It's just coming out of the normal budget. We do still need to put the fence up at Ferris Farm. Again, it's not a large amount of money. Possibly might be able to find that money, but we have cows that graze out there, and the fence is in bad shape, and therefore the cows are constantly being at the Ferris Farm and causing damage. The next section goes more directly to the parks. The upgrade of pump out stations at Sailboat Cove, and we have another one later on down here for Paradise Point, I believe. Yes, the pumps wear out. They're constantly used by the public, so the pumps are always needed. The replacing of deck pavers, that is a constant ongoing thing that we do day after day. People come down, they drop their coolers. Once the concrete pavers are chipped, then they fall and they continue to crack. We have had numerous citizen issues with somebody twisting an ankle or falling through. So the deck pavers are a very critical piece of keeping the docks safe. We've already closed the electrical upgrades at Sailboat and Little Platte Marina. The next one, the other one is again is our pump out station at Little Platte Marina. We just talked about that those are constantly used by the public. The platform dock at the Little Platte Marina. This is something that is totally at the commissioner's discretion. A couple of years ago, a restaurant was built that took up some of the room on the dock. This would be an extension of the dock to allow more areas for picnic tables, public use. That again, this is not really it's not a critical need. It is just more almost a want to expand that dock. The next one up is the 7.1 that goes and talks more about wastewater runoff, stormwater runoff. So the riprap all falls into our lagoon projects that we briefly have already discussed. We are not in need currently of a new master park plan for the parks. We did one a couple of years ago. Again, that falls under the commissioners, whatever direction they want to take for that.
But your recommendation on that one is that $193,000 is not, in your mind, wouldn't be needed.
At this point, I would say it needs to be returned back
Okay.
and not utilized at this point. We have completed all the upgrades at the various camp loops. Paint and stain on wood shelters, that is an ongoing maintenance item. Again, it can be deferred to normal budget year. We have already taken care of the pipe under the picnic arm. The repairs to what they refer to here as county buildings, referring to parks offices, we have actually, we're using that line item to categorize numerous things for the Parks Department. In that, we would look at replacing the siding for the existing park office. We would look at getting it painted. We would look at making painting of central services, the tornado shelters. This would replace the deck that we have closed at the parks office because we consider the deck to be unsafe. This would constitute tearing off that deck. We're only going to make the deck, we're only going to build back about half the size. But that particular line item is almost a catch-all for any and all repairs that we have planned for.
Administrator Kuntz, just before you all turn your pages, Commissioners, you might take note that on 7.1, the riprap project, that is the first appearance on this list of ARPA-eligible expenses. Just might make a note of that can actually come off this particular sheet and go on to an ARPA sheet if that's the determination that we should do.
Thank you for pointing that out. That's something that we need to be aware of as we're going through these figures. Please continue, Deputy Administrator.
We also had a couple of things in that line item. We have been granted approval by the Corps of Engineers to take down 2 old houses out there. We have all the assessments done for any abatement that needs to be done.
What line are you on that one, please?
Oh, sorry, I'm still.
Oh, you're still on the-
I'm still talking about repairs 7.7.
Gotcha, thank you.
But also in that number, again, that's a large number, but we were lumping several projects, was to pay for the cost of taking down of those 2 houses. The total to take down those 2 houses with the abatement and haul off and disposal is $52,000. That would be part of that line item. Okay, moving to 7.8. We've already done some work at the Kelsey Short shower houses. We have already upgraded one of the fish cleaning stations. So the improved ADA campsites, which is 710, we would still like to add in a couple more areas, and this amount of money would cover asphalting that campsite, which provides an even surface for any of those individuals that have mobility issues. It allows them to access the fire rings, do the electrical and water hookups, all on an even surface. The campsite pad renovations, this is constant ongoing need for replacing of gravel. And again, it is a maintenance type item, but with the amount of campsites that we have, it is a never-ending need to have gravel available for that. Resurface asphalt parking pads in C-Loop. Again, same thing as other areas of parking lots. It's ongoing needed maintenance. And a lot of these items you're seeing in here, I really feel that they wound up in this funding project because they've been deferred. Again, most of these items can be budgeted for normal budget years. But some of these have just reached that point where they're kind of, they've gone from needing repair to becoming critical repairs. So take that under advisement when you discuss the projects further. Microsoft crack sealing, again, all of our parking lots. Again, it's ongoing things, we just have not been taking care of it. We have already done and replaced several of our park restrooms, so that one is closed. We have done the playground drainage project, that is closed. And to put some new wood chips down at the playgrounds, that is already also closed. The next line item, 717, again, there's about 3 or 4 of these line items scattered throughout that are highlighted in the purple. They all go part of the lagoon projects. (718) the ash trees, have already been removed due to the ash borer problem, so that's been taken care of. We have replaced some of the shower house door openers. 720, we've already taken care of roofs on on many of the shower houses shelters. 721, we had discussed replacing 4 fee booths. We had discussed closing that. That would be something that we might still want to leave under consideration. Most of those fee booths are 40 years old. They were original to the parks. Again, under your discretion, we can plan that into upcoming budget years. But those booths have, they're just a structure. No heating, cooling, no electricity in them. Replace the playground at Trist Falls. we've decided at this time that it would be better to hold and do that in the future. 723, again, refers to our lagoon projects, drainage. 724, resurfacing the lot. We've already made some repairs over there. 725, we do have ADA compliant fish docks. We'd like to hold this to put this into a normal budget year. 726, listed on your line item, it has Mount Gilead, Ferris Farm, James Farm, and the museum for painting. We are down to needing to still paint part of the museum and part of the original structure of the James Farm house. So the amount that's listed there is, we've already done that, so we would only need half the money. Or again, that's an item that can move to maintenance projects for the following years. We have already done some top dressing at the Rocky Hall ball fields. We'll let Deputy Administrator Carl Walters.
Deputy County Administrator Carl Walters. That remaining money could probably be budgeted because at this point right now, we don't need any top dressing. So we could probably bring it into the following year and just put it in our budget if they need it again for the following year.
728, we can close the park HVAC unit that has been taken care of. Beach renovations, again, this falls possibly under another funding source. This is ongoing need for proper drainage at the beach, replacement of sand, and far edges of the shore, some riprap. The 730, the road to Kelsey Short Camp, we can also close that. Again, some repairs were made, and that can move to a budget line item. Rocky Hollow.
731, Dredge Rocky Hollow Lake Park, 19,881 was to do the engineering onto dredging it. It has also been recommended by the auditor to probably throw it under that stimulus money that we get on that part because there's several sections on that. We'll see that later in the documents.
Is it, Carl, is this the one that we spend a little bit of time talking about in our meetings, the Rocky Hollow dredging?
Yeah, because when they put the Rocky Hollow Lake in back in the early 80s, I believe it was, that was to keep from the flooding downstream. County, I acquired a property because originally it was a rock quarry, and then they put a lake there to slow down some of the water. So we maintain the lake. We always have. But over time, silt has filled in the lake. So down towards the dam, it's supposed to be 28 feet and 6 feet at the intake. But now it's only like a foot deep at the entryway of it because of all the silting and stuff. And we went down there as FEMA and cleaned some of the intake part of it out. But now down at the dam side of it's about 11 foot, and it's silted in quite a bit. Plus they're afraid to open up the drain door on it because they're afraid that if it opens up, then we're going to end up draining the whole lake because they're afraid it's in need of major repair. So this is an ongoing thing that will probably go several years.
And we'll talk about this probably more later
Yes.
when we get a chance, but the money they allocated in this budget it was just for the engineering side of it. It was not to actually, they said it was for dredging, but
But
the
it
line
was
item
not.
clearly wasn't for dredging.
No, wasn't
Okay.
even close.
By the way, because we've talked about some of these kind of projects, is this something that might be available for the ARPA funds, for the federal funds, or? Yeah, I see that we're talking about 731. So we could possibly include that as a purple highlighted item.
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner. One thing I'll add, I'll jump in here. I've heard a lot of discussion about budget. I think something I didn't mention at the beginning. So, what I like about this is the work on this bond list has given us kind of a capital improvement type list that we can think of long term. But I will just say something for the commission to think of is, the use tax dollars. Can't give you the exact numbers right now, but it's essentially almost $4 million in principal and interest we spend a year on these bonds, and they're paid out of the use tax funds, 300, 301, 302. Now I will say we get close to $8 million in revenue from use tax, so that's just kind of something to conceptualize as far as how these dollars are spent. Now, so that's, the net that what you could use. So as far as how many projects could you fund a year, just something to consider when you look at all your options as part to what you have available right now with the current market environment too. So I just wanted to make mention of that.
Please proceed. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, before, did any, as long as we're at talking point, did any commissioners have any questions or comments? Thank you. Go right ahead. I think, Carl, Deputy Administrator, I think you were talking.
Trailheads.
Okay.
Sorry. And now we're to improve all the trailheads on 730 True to modern standards, which has already been taken care of. That 8,000 is probably just, we could take that away, and because I think we're pretty much done with the trailhead standard, modernizing it.
Okay, line item 733. This is to replace Camp Branch shop building. Again, at your discretion, but this is something, it is a project we really would like. Portions of this shop was built in the 70s. Later on, a lean-to was added to the side to park equipment in. It is in need of electrical upgrades just to go in and maintain and use it as a shop when they're working on equipment. But it is one of our older shops on the camp property. The next line item again refers to the dredging of the lagoons. The lagoon project is quite extensive, but we have various lagoons, but these two particular lagoons that this lagoon project refers to is if we have heavy rains and the lagoons fill up with too much rainwater, it causes them to overflow. We have to have the ability to make sure that they are dredged properly, that we do not overflow the lagoons. Part of this project is also to add in a pump station. So if one area, because it's lower, is filling up more and we have any concerns, we can pump to the other lagoon and manage to keep all of the waste where it is supposed to be within the lagoons, and or if we do have to do some pump out, we can do it on our schedule without having to receive an emergency permit to take care of it.
By the way, my understanding on that is that we've had issues arise in the past on the lagoons and had some interaction with the Department of Natural Resources, I think. These improvements will lessen that issue, I would hope, considerably. Is that pretty much the way you guys see it?
That is correct. And a lot of the riprap that you've seen in various locations, that's also to line which stops the erosion, which stops us the constant need of dredging. It helps slow down that progression of losing the soil on the sides and stabilizes the shoreline around it. So I just don't want to skip over those too lightly. Even though we do have them highlighted in purple, I can't overemphasize the importance of those projects. Next line is the dog park. We have completed the dog park. Moving to 8.1, we, rather than in one of our other line items where we're talking about park or county building improvements up at the parks, we're just changing the siding, getting the thing painted. We do not feel like we have to have a new park office at this time.
If I could jump in on this. So
Sure.
8.1 and 8.2 are the first really, really big projects that you're going to see. And this is for the new park office and the astronomy building. ballpark about 5.3 million. We've spent approximately a quarter of a mil, or yeah, 250,000. So there's like $5 million unspent here. This would be a very large consideration. I think the consensus from the group was that this probably wasn't necessary, but obviously this is one of two really large expenditures that we'll talk about this morning that certainly needs some consideration, I think.
Yeah, I think that's certainly consensus of the commission on that point, it appears to me. Thank you. Please proceed.
The playground for Little Platte, we're gonna, again, we did not feel like we needed that at this time. The archery range, again, we are recommending to not proceed with that expenditure at this time. There is another item here, the 85T.
And so this is, I would recommend on this one, we kind of not really consider it because there's kind of this and I don't mean do it or don't do it. I mean, just kind of put it on pause because we are working with the Corps. This has been an ongoing issue with the Corps that they have asked us to clean up the clay pigeons out there. It will, if we have to do it, it will be an enormous expenditure. There is some discussion about whether it's truly needed. And so I've been starting to work on that. And there's also going to be a change in leadership at the Corps. So we're kind of a lot of moving parts on this one. We hope to not have to do it, to be honest, because it is a big expenditure. And multiple deadlines to do it were not met in prior years. So hopefully we can get some resolution on that, make a recommendation, hopefully in the next 60 days. And if we have to do it, if we could use it through ARP money, would obviously be, I think, preferable. But that would be something to consider.
Is that good with the commissioners?
Commissioners, the next several line items are all, and I'm happy to go through them one by one if you want. All the rest of these were items that we suggested closing on. They were trucks, pieces of equipment, a golf cart, all pieces of equipment that we did not feel like were appropriate to be paying the types of money and the long-term fees we would for these. These are considered everyday things that we should be putting in the budgets.
My sons are like that, the mini excavators.
So I think our next one brings us up to 919.
919, finished mower and trail, being that cost and things, I think we could probably put it into the budget for 2022. We're not of a need of it. I mean, we are in need of it right now, but it's not a desperate thing that we need right now. I think we can get by with what we got in used equipment right now. But we're basically going to have to look at some of this equipment because we're putting more money into it than really that the equipment's worth. So as we go down through these things and we see this, I'll mention what's taking place.
Again, the next following line items are all requests for mowers and pieces of equipment that we have suggested that we plan for in a normal budget year, which would take us down to trail projects at 10-1.
Does anybody have any questions about 9? I know there's kind of a lot of equipment purchases that Parks just doesn't think are necessary, but we're certainly happy to go through any of those that you have questions about.
I mean, in my opinion, these are items that were not appropriate for long-term debt. I think going through each one individually is maybe instructive, but not necessarily getting us down the road any faster. Do any of the commissioners have any questions related to those? Okay. Yeah, you can go right ahead then, please.
And then-
Thank you.
And Donna, let me jump in. So on 10-1 is the second, so we had the Parks Office. This is the second really large expenditure that I mentioned. This is a $4.7 million trail, of which about $4.4 million is still unexpended. And just so you understand what this is, and tell me if I get it wrong, but we currently have a couple trails out there, and this would connect those two trails. And am I remembering correctly, it was 11 miles to connect the two?
Yes.
So it's an 11-mile connector between two trails, which I think everybody in the room is very in favor of trails, but this is still $4.4 million unexpended. I think the consensus was that didn't seem to make a lot of sense given the distance between the two trails and arguably the lack of use, that maybe people on bicycles, maybe people on horse might use the connector, but certainly people on foot, that's a long way to go just for a connector.
I think you're right on that. I think that in my view anyway, we could make much more accessible trails if we decide to spend the money for that purpose. I think there are opportunities where we could put trails up that would be much more widely used. These seem like they're a little bit out of the way and a little bit specialized in their usage. I mean, whether we do go forward either with these projects or divert the money or decide to save the money or any combination is a decision for the commission. But I think there certainly is an appetite on the part of the commission to revisit the issue and to look at that a lot more carefully, because that is a lot of money for something that would not get a tremendous amount of use, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, Commissioner, if I could, I agree. Some of these items are bigger than others, as county councilors pointed out. This is obviously probably the biggest individual item. I do support moving in the direction of essentially canceling that particular trail project. I do wonder. I do support the county investing in trails. I think it's, we could go over the whole list of reasons why it's good for quality of life and encouraging folks to come live here and make Clay County as good as it can be. So, but I do wonder if there's some room for potentially keeping these dollars in the goal of creating trails here in Clay County, but maybe not putting 100% of it into this one project. That was really the biggest issue I had with it. Was that if we're going to put $5 million into trails that have COP, that maybe we ought to have a wider distribution of those funds for trails across the county. I remember speaking with Kevin one time about potentially partnering with municipalities here in Clay County to do like a matching grant program to essentially if there are ways we can partner with our cities to help on trail projects with that $5 million. So I guess that's my view, is that the potential of keeping those dollars in a trails-based program, but not just this one Smithville Lake Trail. But I'm not married to that idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I certainly agree with you, the point you're making. If I understand correctly, this trail might have been largely used for equestrian uses, which we certainly appreciate those in our community who participated in that, but I think we need to keep an eye on the larger population who don't own horses. Please proceed.
Well, Commission,
Oh,
just to
yes.
give you an update about the trails. We already have 36 miles of trails that we have to maintain anyway. If we add that 11 miles to it, that puts us at 48, 49 miles of trails we got to maintain. We're not able to maintain what we already have now. So we really need to, if that's possible, Commission, to set aside some of that to upgrade, because we got a little money just to do a little bit of trail work, but to set aside so we can upgrade that 36 miles away we do, because we do have some, deterioration and stuff that happens, and as budgets come every year, you kind of get turned down for some of those projects and stuff like that because there's no money there to be had. But so if we could look ahead to make sure that we keep people safe, our residents and stuff, as they walk those trails.
Thank you. That's a well-taken point. Are we ready to proceed? Very well.
Highway projects, as you see, is 11-2. Going down through there, those were FEMA projects, and one of those, as you see, is Rocky Hollow. Those were to clean out and to replace boxes as we went through to get some of those flows, some of those roads and some of those boxes cleaned up, repaired so that people could make their way around through the county on our roads. Then that pretty much takes care of all of 11 through those type of projects. And then we go to road improvement projects. 12-1, Bridge 62, which has already been let for $1.8 million, which is already in process right now. They're doing the grubbing and stuff like that, getting ready, and they've already tore out the old bridge. Then we go to 12-2, which is 148th Street, is been approved for $1.3 million. Hopefully they'll get on way with that. We haven't got a notice to proceed yet. Bridge 141, 12-3 project has been done. They just have a little bit seeding to do, and then we'll have a meeting out there to get it all approved and everything, and everybody can go their separate ways. 167 136th Street currently was 5-ton. Now it's back in place. We've taken that. That's to close. That bridge is open. People are happy with that. The 12-5 Bridge 206 Greenwood Road, we had just got the bid on that Friday or Thursday, and that'll be coming in front of the commission to be approved as well, so we can get that bridge on the way. And it came in lower than we anticipated, so that's a good thing. 12-6, 131, 140th Street Bridge is to close. And then we make it down. If anybody's got any questions about those bridges, we're down to the general in 13-1.
Okay, so if I can jump in, I think we are basically done with the list of things that were on the old budget that were the previous COP plan was to spend those dollars for. And I think if there's time, and I think we're doing okay on time, I think there's some interest in having a discussion about additional requests. I know the sheriff is here to probably talk about a couple. But before we do that, does anybody need to take a break? And/or does anybody want to talk about this? I know we went through a lot of stuff. Does anybody want to circle back to anything and talk about it or have any questions?
What I would kind of like to see is, I think we've got some sense of what's here, so I would kind of like to, the next round of getting this data is to crunch it down to what is actually going to be our decision points that we're going to have to be making. This is really great because it gives us the overall picture, but I think what I personally would like to see presented at some point is a point-by-point decision-making document. Does that concur with what the commissioners think? I mean, I assume that was what we were going to be doing, but I
Sure.
want to just say it out loud.
Yeah, I think that's right. And when we do that, I mean, just for process, would you want staff to go ahead and pull out the things that staff recommends can be done in the regular budgeting process as opposed to something that might involve a debt issuance?
Again, I'd like to defer to the wisdom of the commission. I think I would like to see them pulled out, but I would also like to see them set aside in perhaps a separate document so that when we go in because we're going to be looking at our next budget coming up, very shortly. So this might give us an idea of what it is we are deferring to that budget, so we can get a real balanced view of, if we take a whole lot of stuff out of this and move it on to regular budget, we need to know what it is we are at least initially committing ourselves to. So I'd like to see that just so we have a handle on where we're headed with that, if that sounds like a reasonable way to proceed. Okay, I'm getting head nods, so that if that's something that staff feels comfortable with.
Do we want to take a break for a minute or two, or do you want to keep going?
I think it is, given that we're in a little bit of a less than ideal climate situation here, let's go ahead and, it is roughly 10 minutes after the hour. Let's just give us about 5 or 10 minutes, then come back. I think we're still going to be able to get through. I think the goal is to complete by noon. Is that going to work with everybody's schedule? All right, with that, we will stand at ease until, say, 20 minutes after the hour.
Is this the best page to work from now? Or what do you think? How do we go do this next week? Because I don't have any comfort for it.
I think that one is fine.
Okay.
So it gives us the total list. The one after that is just A to A. There are a number of ways to balance it, but to meet the need, we recommend just cutting those three, and that gives us a balance.
Yeah. Well, I think we're. Yeah. Well, I think the stuff that we want to cut, they're on board with. I think the things that can push to regular budget they're on board with. It's, you know,
So how's it going?
That's
on the new stuff.
You know, there's one way to get this stuff done fast. Is turn off the air conditioner. We're all going to need a mood here. Let's go on to the roll.
I think what they're going to look for next, what I just heard, is kind of a yes no. You know, here is this, and it may be that they're also going to look for what
We go,
Make your case, Kevin.
Are we ready? I think page 6 would be the right page to work from. Yeah, so I think that maybe the thing to do would be to start on page 6. Okay.
I'd like to call this commission back to order after our short break. Mr. Counselor, you had a recommendation on where you would like us to take up from here?
Yeah, so now I think we want to look at some of the additional projects that have not been discussed. And I think on the worksheet you have in front of you, maybe page 6 would be the one to work from and go down those and kind of go through the same process with the one exception. The last one, items category 17, the sheriff is here. And I might suggest respectfully that we go ahead and start with him so he can get on to his day while the rest of us are working through the other things.
I think that might be a good way to go, so you can get back to what will hopefully be your air-conditioned office.
Thank you, Commissioners. Will Aiken, Clay County Sheriff. I appreciate you taking me, or allowing me to take some time to begin here so I can get back to the office. I'll try to make this brief. The detention center locking control system on 17-1, we're asking for $1.5 million. And
Excuse me, that is on
sorry,
our
page
packets,
6.
Oh, you said 17.
Section 17-1.
Okay, I'm looking at the next page over. Okay, I've got it. Yeah, I was looking at the next page. Just want to make sure we were on the same spot.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I was going to say I can be flexible. I can go to page 7.
We're good.
All right, $1.5 million. As I have presented in the past, the detention center is aging, and we have to make sure that the control panels that secure the facility are updated, upgraded, so we don't have any issues with, safety issues with inmates possibly escaping and other issues of the like. 17.2 is for detention center cameras. I will say that as of, I believe, Thursday, we got the quote back for the cameras, and it was actually $529,000 and change. I don't know the exact number, but which comes well below the $1 million that I had talked about last week. I will say that there are other areas that we need to consider, and I was talking with counselor and the county administrator along with the county auditor in being able to use those funds with the commission's approval that still fit in line with cameras and safety features to make sure that detention operations can be recorded. 17.3 is a training facility that incorporates a shooting range on the facility grounds. The request there is $1.5 million, but the reason why we're asking for that amount is because we can actually build this facility out to be a regional training facility and bring partners in from the KC metro area, but beyond the borders of even the state of Missouri. And we can bring in high-value trainers, which will bring in students and attendees from other states as well. And so with $1.5 million, we would be able to accomplish that and not have to worry about even training our own personnel or the municipalities or municipal partners within Clay County, but we can start bringing other people into Clay County.
And on that one real quick, on the training facility, either this Thursday or 2 Thursdays from now, you will likely see a contract coming in front of you in our commission meeting on the land itself. And we are leasing the land for 30 years.
Correct.
It's a very good piece of land, we think, for that purpose. The lease rate is almost free, to be honest. Is it $1,000 over 30 years, I think?
$1,000 up front for 30 years.
So $33 a year for this. How many acres is it roughly?
I believe we were originally looking at 40 acres, but I believe it went up to around 60 acres to accommodate the entire training facility on the grounds.
So that's a big piece of that request. the land, we have not, obviously not, you've not signed an agreement or even passed an agreement, but that will be coming up, and that would be, certainly be part and parcel to this. That we actually, for the first time, have identified and potentially have available to us sufficient land for this purpose.
And that's something I think you probably had conversations, Mr. Sheriff, with all three commissioners about, something I'm pretty excited about. What would, we're going to want to see, obviously, at some point, before we get too deep into it, is an itemized list of how we go about this, how much goes for this and that. The opportunity with a nearly free piece of property to work from, obviously, is a huge advantage. And combined with, while we do lease land and have buildings and assets on them, this would not have the same limitations that, for instance, the Army Corps of Engineers would have on the usage of the land that we have around Smithfield Lake. We would have much more latitude in what we were able to do. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The other thing is that my understanding is, while I don't know that we would necessarily turn a profit on it, but it would allow fees to be charged so that we would at least get some cash flow from it. And one of the other things that appeals to me about this project is that it would give us a leadership position in the immediate area, if not the region, as far as having a premier training facility. So I think it would certainly be an item worth considering for this amount of money.
Absolutely. We definitely don't want to use this training facility as a cash cow. It's going to be, our goal is to be able to bring partners in, but we also know that to go to other training facilities, we have to pay money, but rather for us paying out money to go train, we would use our partners' willingness to come to our facility. And instead of making money from this training facility on the grounds, what we would like to do is just find a way to sustain the operations, and then the rest of the money go back to the county to use however they decide to use it, however you decide to use it.
Right. So, I mean, we would be deriving some degree of revenue from both the no longer having the necessity to go out and pay for our own training, but also by the revenue derived of those coming in and using our facilities. So we would get, while it's not going to necessarily be a great deal of income flowing into the county, it will in fact be it will certainly offset a lot of the expenses that we will have to incur in any case.
I would like to think that instead of this training facility being a burden on the county, it would be no burden on the county, but then also lessen the demands for the Clay County Sheriff's Office to go to training to other places.
Did any other commissioners have any thoughts or questions, comments? Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you, Sheriff. So on the number amounts here, right? These are pretty round numbers, right? These aren't so we don't have like hard bids on these yet, right? I mean, you mentioned the 530 for the cameras, so that's great news.
Yes.
So I guess in terms of what we would do with the other half of that money, you started to say something about potential use for the other half of that million, and then on those other two, are we going to get more clarity? Like for the shooting range, you have at 1.5 million. When will we know how much it actually?
We're still working on those numbers, and those are great questions. The reason why these are so round is because we're working off of historical knowledge based off of our conversations in the past with our vendors. We're still working on those numbers, but before we spend any money, the build out of the training facility itself will be brought back, and the commission will be updated as we go. The goal at the training facility is to have a standalone training facility where we can do classroom type stuff, hands-on type stuff, drills, but then also have ranges on the facility grounds that would accommodate long range and short range, but then also being able to train in all elements that is presented to us when we're doing our job. But then there's also another key piece of this is doing decision-based shooting, which is going to be afforded to us with what we call a shoot house. So once we get those numbers in, that's something that we would be able to present to the commission. But that's why they're so round right now.
No, I got you. Yeah. So, but like, are we confident that 1.5 million is going to be enough to cover the total of the project, for example?
Well, when you put it that way, enough, yes. But if I could get, another $9 million, we can turn it into a state-of-the-art facility. But I will say in confidence that $1.5 million would be able to get us to a point where we would be recognized in the Midwestern part of the United States.
Gotcha. And then for like the locking system, right? You have that at 1.5 million as well.
1.5 million, yeah, right now. We're still assessing that. We're still working with the vendor to get an updated price. The 1.5 is just from what I can gather on historical documents that we still had on file from 12 years ago. So that's the one where we're kind of like, okay, technology has increased. We're just estimating now that it's going to be significantly more.
Gotcha. And just in terms of like timeline of when we would have some more clarity as to how much that actually.
I was hoping to have it by today, but the vendors that we're working with, they have reps that travel all over their portion of the United States where they do their sales, and so we're having to wait for their schedules so they can come over here and take a look at our current system.
Okay. And are there multiple vendor options, or is it just?
I believe with the system that we have right now, we have one vendor that does it. Now, when you take into account the age of the facility, if we can use what is there or as much as what is there in order to address the issue that we have, then that would lessen the cost. Now, we can go out to other vendors, but we're basically going to be doing an entirely new build out of our facility, which we already know is going to cost millions of dollars on top of 1.5.
Okay. And then just for the other $500,000 on the cameras, were you suggesting that there would be some additional use for that other $500,000?
Absolutely. There's two other things that are of a concern in our detention facility, and one is our radio system inside our facility. We have multiple accounts now where incidents have occurred inside our facility, and our detention officers and our deputies are not able to communicate because of the thickness of the walls and the aging system of the radio system. On top of that, which radios are always expensive, but the good news with the radios inside of the facility, it doesn't operate the same way as radios out in the field. Two different systems. The other piece that concerns me, and not really concerned, but I would strongly recommend doing is having body cams on our detention employees. And you know, the importance of having body cams out in the field, everyone knows, extremely important. But I would have to present to the commission of why don't we have those same body cams on our detention employees when we're caring for those who are in our custody.
Yeah, no, the radio project and that both make sense to me. So, but I mean, is the idea that the $500,000 is enough for that, and that we would pay for those things out of that line item, the detention center cameras item?
I think so. And so one of the questions that I pose to this end of the table is, if I'm not able to spend the allotted money for that project, if I understand it correctly, that money would go back to the commission to decide what was going to happen from there. But then also I would come back to the commission and say, hey, we were able to come under that dollar amount. Would it be possible to use a portion of the remaining funds for the additional projects?
Yeah, I gotcha. I just wonder if we already know that it's going to be $500,000 less than that. Then why not? Why don't we just put the money into it directly?
The issue with the body cams, it's not the body cam itself. The body cam itself, I mean, yes, it costs money, $1,000 I think per device, but it's the server capacity on the back end. That's where the biggest concern is, and I think County IT along with our IT are working together to find a solution to store all the video that is downloaded from our body cams, as well as our dash cams in our vehicles. I think we're in, maybe not the right term to use, critical capacity right now, and we're looking for a server option to mitigate that issue. But I think even with the radios, which is kind of like an internal UHF, VHF system that operates within a facility using bidirectional amplifiers, we would be able to have or improve our communications within the facility. When you're using that type of equipment inside of a facility, it's significantly less than when you have to install a microwave dish on top of an antenna. That's $1.5 million just to build out. So I would say with confidence we would be able to accomplish those other two projects with the remaining funds.
Thank you.
Something I want to just, I'm sorry. I just want to throw out there, just for the sake of our conversations, as we are getting into these new items, all of these numbers are very round items. So not, when these requests are now being made, and Commissioner Carpenter makes an excellent point, that these are very round numbers. And the reason for that is these are almost, they're more than just ideas, but these are recommendations that have not yet been put out to bid. The hope is that is in the detention cameras having the amount of 1 million, then coming more like 529, that we may well, as we go along, see some savings. But I think to Commissioner Carpenter's point, it is important for us to be looking at these as they come up. I think the other thing is that we should always keep in mind is none of these monies will be spent without the explicit and direct votes from this commission. So we will maintain control over these expenditures and make sure that we are getting the best bang for our buck on the detention center cameras. When we started getting cameras onto the road deputies, one of the issues that came up was the not as obvious expense of data storage. And it seems clear that if we go to this step of putting cameras on deputies serving in the detention centers, we're going to have similar issues. So I think that's something that I'm glad we're discussing. We will discuss further more deeply, but it is part of the overall cost, I think, that we need to consider as we go forward.
Okay. Could I ask one clarifying question? In terms of, you said that we will vote on each item as they come up. And not just pertaining to these budgets under the sheriff's office, but across the board, is that definitely true? And this would be a question for county councilor as well. With each of these items, if we keep them under COP, are we going to come back and officially have to authorize each line item?
I think, we may well bundle them, and I might defer to...
and that question's for either of you, yeah.
Yeah, we may well end up bundling them, but in my estimation, any future expenditure should not be made without at least the opportunity to vote. In other words, if there's a bundle of expenditures, like say this under the sheriff's, if we vote on that as a group, I think there still has to be the opportunity for any commissioner that wants to separate an issue out and have a separate vote. I think that has to stay intact because we need to make sure that what we expend here is something that has the approval of the commission and nobody feels left out. I'll go ahead. I think the auditor wanted to speak on a different point, but if anybody wants to address that one as well, that would also be certainly welcome.
Well, just a couple thoughts on the discussion here. Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. So we've heard a lot of feedback and adjustments, I think, already today, not just sheriff's items, but all items that can be further adjusted for a vote. Should commission want to proceed with where we are now, we can certainly take that adjusted number and create a new sub-project, and it's spoken for by the sheriff for those projects he mentioned. In the meantime, the balance of that for our current status going forward, should this be a future item, we can look at a regular process to revisit these and reappropriate as needed. The main reason I'm so glad we're doing this today is we previously had no budget, and there was no one saying we have enough budget or cash for that matter. It was a glorified slush fund. And a lot of these projects, you'll note, went over budget. And so there was no plan. So I'm glad that, we're taking that approach. This functions very differently from any of our other accounts payable in that there is no real, true expenditure authority control right now. It's held separately in trust. And so, this is a way to do that should we want to proceed. And so that's kind of my idea is we can definitely make that adjustment and bring this back to the commission based on what we've heard today. So
I kind of think of it in terms of these expenses, and maybe there's a different method here, but as far as these new expenses go, would be that they would come to us something akin to, if not literally, the form of a resolution saying X number of dollars will be expended from the COP account for say $529,000 in change for detention center cameras. So I mean, that's how I envision this going forward. And I want to make sure that we're all aware that that level of consideration and consent by the commission is going to be consistent throughout the process, in the same way that I think it's really a good thing that the auditor is involved with the oversight and the watchdog function that I think is appropriate for the office. So I feel like we're going along in a more professional and open way. Does that pretty much resonate with everyone else?
Yeah, and Commissioner, to answer some of your questions, and I'll first say that, from this end of the table, when we started looking through this project, we were, I'll say, generously surprised at how little oversight there was, how little auditor involvement there was, how little commission involvement there was, and I just don't think those. I think those are inexcusable. We do think that these budget items can and should be reviewed and can be altered. And so I envision something like, coming up with a new budget, whatever that may be, taking into account ongoing annual budgeting as well as ARP money, and then the commission making decisions on what real priorities there are and how to expend them. But I think in many ways the field is kind of open for you guys to do that, because we've stopped these expenditures that we could, and put everything on pause so that we could do this exercise and give you guys hopefully as much information as you need to review that.
Does that address some of the concerns you had?
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner?
I appreciate it.
Commissioner Thompson, did you have any concerns you'd like to express? That kind of cover anything that you had in your mind?
I think it covers it.
Thank you. Okay.
One other thing I'd like to add is there's still areas of the sheriff's office that we're still looking at assessing, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because I want to make sure that I'm working with the deputy directors, Carl Walters, who's going to be helping us with the training facility, Donna Kuntz, who's going to be helping us with the facilities portion of the detention facility, and then IT component with Kevin Shaw, and of course with Tom's help and oversight. But one of the things that I want to say is that this is something that I will definitely keep the commission apprised of as we progress. I just want to make sure that with everyone doing their part, that we're not doing redundant actions. So that way we're still on the same page and we only spend the amount of dollars that we need to spend.
Thank you very much. Any further questions of the sheriff? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next area.
Thank you.
And as we're waiting for the deputy administrator to come to the table, I just want to say that having brought up that issue, that kind of takes care of, I think, concerns that are up and down the list as far as just procedural. So hopefully that time will allow us to more efficiently work through what is the remainder of our agenda. Please proceed.
All right, commissioners. By the way, I definitely echo what Sheriff Aiken just said, because we're very familiar with some of the problems he has going on in his building. So this brings us back to a topic I mentioned earlier, Schrader Roof, that we discussed perhaps moving some other funds for. We need to reseal the Schrader parking lot, and then the bathroom upgrades for Schrader. We very much appreciate you guys taking the time to sit down with us and re-looking at how the projects were divided before. There's very few buildings. I probably couldn't sit here and tell you that there needs some major renovation too. So taking that kind of with a grain of salt, not trying to overwhelm you, but our buildings are starting to age and we do need several things with them. So I will turn it back over to Deputy Carl Walters here for the golf course section.
Carl Walters, Deputy Director of Administrations. Item 415, golf course green on the posse, the retaining wall that's next to the lake. The green is starting to settle with the flooding that we've had over the years. I talked to a contractor on it and 416 as well, and those are about the close numbers that we're looking at to put rock in to bring and save those greens, keep those, in play. It'll take a little bit of work, but it's going to take some rock to get it, get it straightened out. Golf course, 417 golf course T-mowers. I believe we could probably take that and budget. Those are $120,000 piece T-mowers. We have some T-mowers that are really, I hate to say junk, but they do need to be replaced. But as we do budget, we could see about replacing them as we do budgets and stuff through the years. Same way with the Cushman Truckster. We could probably look at next year to turn around and make that as a budget item as well on 418. 419, as I told you before, the makeover on the intake pipe for the irrigation. Like I said, $40,000 a piece for each one of those intake pipes. If you put a pipe inside of a pipe, you're reducing the flow of the suction water, which works those pumps harder. If we was to do it properly, you're probably looking at $100,000 a piece for each one to actually do a actual standard pipe to keep that water intake going so that we're not overworking the pumps. As you get to 737, the dredge of the First State floodgate repair and to dredge that lake. As they said, it might fall under the APRA eligibility, $800,000. And then the lagoon station at the lagoon connection pipe that's under parks also fall under that part of it, as we discussed earlier. Then I'll just defer this to Deputy Director Donovan.
The next two items, Commissioners, are items that I have already discussed with you when we were looking at that one pot of money that was already sitting in the funds we've already discussed, but I've identified these two items specifically. So I want to clarify that they were lumped into a lot of other things we were talking about parks. The park office renovation, the $143,000, that is a specific number pulled from bids that we've gotten involving siding, painting, and replacement of the tear-off and replacement of the deck. And the other one, again, is that we have two houses out there that are slated for demolition, but just no funding to actually tear them down, and that's the $52,000. So those are two hard bid numbers.
By the way, I appreciate you mentioning when they are hard bid numbers, because some of the others were not quite so thank you for pointing that out.
As we move on to Trails mower, 10-3 Trails mower. Again, it could be a budgeted item for $110,000. It seems that the Trails always gets their hand-me-downs from the parks, and we're getting these mowers that we have to continually work on and try to keep maintained. But again, I can throw that under a budgeted item, and that is a hard number. Go to 11-6, highway salt storage shed. That is a hard number to replace that salt storage shed. It is the roof structure and the concrete wall structure is failing, so we're really needing to replace that. If that's possible, we could get that done before something is to happen on some of our equipment, because it really is in bad shape, and I could show you pictures if you want me to later, show you how bad that is, but it is in a failing condition. We'll go to 12-7, bridge replacement. As you see, all these have got numbers to them. I've talked to a contractor. I know it says 7 and 8 and 8 and 7, but we kind of looked at what it would cost, and we're on the high side of those replacements. 12-7 is the Long Ridge Road. It is a very narrow bridge, and we could straighten that out to make it so it's more accommodating for people, because it's right close to a curve, that people don't come at the last minute and we don't have any issues. And we're talking about both sides. It's kind of blindsided. to open that up so people could get through there safely. When we go to 12-8, bridge replacement 112th and Aldridge Roads, actually 2 weeks ago, the state closed it down. It is non-passable and non-functional. That number, again, we're there. We don't have any, let's go back to, we don't have any more BORO funds when we get done with Greenwood Road Bridge. So these are ones that we're going to have to do in-house, and we'll see if we could get some funds on that, not possibly, or we could actually do it, build our, not our BOR fund, but our other fund. See if we can do these bridges and build with those funds as well so that we can have monies sitting in our, why does that not come to me now? Anyway, funding that we have. And then we got our South and North Bluff Road. They're within 100 feet of one another. That is down in the lower end of by Missouri City. That could actually be replaced because it's making the buses, the farmers, and residents not so much go around, but it takes lighter traffic for them to get through. So if we could replace those, that would kind of help some of the traffic on that area right there. As we go on to 14.1, airport storage. Right now we're occupying a hangar to store our equipment in to keep it out of the weather, and we can't get it all in there. It would be we thought it'd be in our best interest, that is to put one up, a 60 by 80 shop storage, to open that hangar so we can start getting revenue off of that hangar instead of occupying it with our equipment. I brought to you this 14.2 airport transit hangar. Where Central's at now, sitting right next to our terminal hangar, used to be our transit hangar. And transit meaning that when airplanes come in, a lot of people don't like their planes out into the weather, so they like to store, and they'll pay to have those things stored, like their jets and stuff. And in the wintertime, they like to keep them warm, so they pay a fee to keep that stuff stored or keep it warm and stuff. So we were making money off of that at one time. Then I wasn't here, they gave that hangar to Central. They work out of it. They buy a lot of fuel from us and things, and that was what the accommodations were, and the agreement was under that part of it. But we feel like a transit hangar, we feel like we're missing out on revenue with that, bringing in jets, King Airs and stuff to store their hangars, and we make that as they store or bring it in and store it. We're making revenue by the day. So, and then when they come in, they're buying our fuel. So there's two good things out of that when they're buying our fuel and storing their hangar. 14.3, leased hangar purchase. To purchase a hangar we have out there currently to draw the revenue off of it, because as you know, we only get the leased property off of it per year, which is like $2,300. If we could have this to lease through the county, we would be making monthly revenue right around 30, I believe it was 23 or $3,300 a month. Or if we could, and that's to handle one plane. If we could have several planes in there, which we could handle the smaller Navions and stuff, where you could get 3 planes in it, then we could make revenue on top of that as well, which is, to me, for the airport and for the county, is a good thing. It's all about trying to pull in some revenue. Plus, when we have those planes and we have those people flying in, they're buying or flying out, we're back to buying our fuel, buying our oil, and so that keeps us going. I brought this other one, 14.4. This is an airport 8 plane hangar unit. It's at $300,000, but that was just to purchase the unit itself. Getting the cost is not yet to be determined, because we know that to install it and bring it from the ground up is a little bit more money. Not knowing what that is, as we say, people are busy, Trying to get people out there to give us some hard numbers is a little difficult, and I could bring that to you later, but right now, as of this is to handle 300,000 is to handle like Navion planes, the smaller planes that we could store. We're actually looking at options to get a price on to store jets, to have them based there as well, because we do have a waiting list of probably 16 to 20 people on smaller planes, and we have a waiting list of probably 10 people on jets that want to come to us. And we also found out that they're running some people out of the downtown airport. Somebody either purchased it or they took it over, and now they're running people out of the downtown area. So they're trying to find places to go with their jets. So that's a benefit for us if we could start drawing them people our way and have them start leasing out at our place so we can make money. If there's any questions, I'd be more than welcome to answer if you have anything. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Deputy Director Donna Coombs.
Any questions?
Well, I'm happy to wait to the end, I guess. I've got questions, I think, probably on the golf course and the airport. But I don't know if we want to wait till we go through all of the new items before circling back, or however you all want to do it. We've just been moving through so far, so that's up to...
I don't have a preference. Do we have a preference? Just wait until the end, or?
I think we're getting pretty close to the end.
Yeah, let's go ahead and maybe just go ahead and go through the last, because we only have one section left. Let's go ahead or two sections. Let's go ahead and do that and then come back to your question if that sounds reasonable.
Sounds great, yeah, thanks.
All right, Commissioner, the next one refers to our boys' home. These are actually hard bid numbers. Paint the interior, bathroom remodel, replace broken doors with solid core doors, replace the kitchen linoleum and the countertop, which is from the era of a salmon pink. Those are all hard bid numbers. The boys and girls home roofs, that's an approximate estimation of spending $30,000 per group home for the roofs. One thing has come up since we've had this discussion, and I don't have any numbers or any findings yet. So we had a electrical issue at the girls home about a week ago. It is a 91-year-old home, and we are currently investigating to see if we need to completely rewire that home. We don't have that investigation. It's not completed yet, so I will just throw that out there. The next section is all concerning our courts. The first one, Rooney Justice Center, concrete work, that should actually say steps instead of plaza. The $27,000, which is a hard bid, is just for fixing the large steps. To work on the plaza concrete and replace some of the falling off tile, we have a hard bid for $74,000 for that. So there's actually, we have the wording for two things, but we only have the price for one. Court security entrance upgrades is actually a request from the Sheriff's Department. That is to do an emergency lockdown on the front doors. That is a hard bid number. So for some reason, if someone should leave the courtroom, they would be able to emergency lock down the front entrance area. Courthouse room renovations, courthouse electrical improvements, and anything involving the roof, those are all just estimated numbers. Had a meeting with the presiding judge last week. They have a very lengthy list of what they'd like to see. No numbers associated with it. It would almost probably be more beneficial to think about building a new building. They would like new HVAC, new plumbing, new electrical, restroom upgrades. The roof is, the portion of the roof they're referring to is a copper dome part that was torn up in the 2003, 2004 tornado time frame, and it peeled off the copper roof, and a new piece of copper was put on at that time, but it's now showing its age. We also need to upgrade that building with Wi-Fi. Again, these were all things that came out of a discussion last Thursday. Absolutely no numbers. One of the things they did ask for that pertains to the prosecutor's office This is something we'll look at, some internal numbers, and that is to add 4 more offices into the prosecuting attorney's area to accommodate his new need for prosecutors, which also all plays into COVID-related issues. So I want to have a discussion with our auditor about that request that came in last week. And hopefully that concludes most of our conversation.
Commissioner Carpenter, did you have some questions you'd like to have?
Yeah, I mean, do we have a time constraint here though, or what's that situation?
A time frame?
Well, I know we had talked about breaking at some point, but
Right.
We're coming back at 2. I think, Commissioner Thompson, you definitely have some time constraints.
Thank you. If we can get out of here in the next 15 minutes, I
Next
think I should be
15.
fine.
Okay.
Yes. You want me back at 2? Yes.
So, yes.
Just a small, quick housekeeping question. I understand that the bank building has a conference room that would be available to us. Would you rather meet there at 2 or come back here in this building? I know it's a little uncomfortable for everyone, but if we'd rather meet over there, I understand there is space available over there.
yeah, I mean, does that meet our public notification rules? If it does, I'm good with that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think the higher ceiling here keeps
Yes,
us a little
it's
bit
okay.
cooler.
It's all
I think we're
closed.
better off there. That's okay with everybody?
Yeah, just meet over there.
Right, meet over there? Okay, well,
Yeah.
we would just try to include that in the motion when we go into executive session, that's where we will be convening.
Okay, perfect.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So briefly on let's go to the golf course items first. And sorry in advance for being a pain on the golf course stuff. It seems to me that we already spent several $1 million of COP money out of the golf course.
Right.
And these are new items, right? These would be
Correct.
additional expenditures.
Correct.
And so, you're talking, another $250,000 there, another $250,000 there. And this isn't just a question for you. This is maybe commentary more than anything. But I do wonder at what point, if ever, we've done an analysis on the golf course as to the amount of money that we spend there versus the amount of money that comes in. Private golf courses exist. They have to figure out a way to exist in the free market and make the finances work. I do wonder how much more we as a county spend. We've already spent several millions of dollars in COP. This would be hundreds of thousands more. I guess I wonder if it's worth it at some point for the county to own a golf course and keep putting millions of dollars of taxpayer money into the golf course. And if there isn't another way to sort of demand more accountability in terms of the amount of money we're spending there versus the amount of money they bring in from green fees or whatever the sources of revenue are out there. So I don't know that I guess I'm not asking a specific question. I guess I'm expressing some discomfort with endlessly spending significant amounts of money there.
I think you bring up a point that is at least worthy of consideration. I've tried in past years to even have a discussion. I'm not advocating one way or the other, but I think, I don't think I know. In past years, I've tried to bring up to just discuss, is this something we should be doing or is it not? I was unable to get any further than just asking the question, should we discuss it? The answer was no. And that was it. So I think it's a valid point to bring up. I don't have a particular preconceived notion on that. I think if we're going to have a golf course, we certainly need to keep it in as good a repair as possible. But I think you're right to raise the larger issue of, is this a function that we as a county government should be engaging in or not? So I think that's a valid question that is part of this discussion, but
yeah, and I do have some hesitation as to whether or not it's a role for government question, sure, and whether or not this falls under the traditional concept of, you know, parks and trails and that sort of thing. But if we're going to maintain ownership and operation of the golf course, I do wonder if we should start putting into place more demands as to trying to make the financial side of the equation work, or at least, at the very least, understand what is the net loss over time that we're experiencing year over year. You know, are we losing an average of $1 million a year? Is it $2 million a year? I mean, when we're spending $4 million on COP, and that's not even the regular budget. It doesn't seem like anybody knows how much, if you went over the last 10 years and you did the net expenditures versus the net revenue coming in, what that would look like over the last 10 years. If somebody does know, of course,
I might.
I'd love to know.
I could chime in there.
Mr. Auditor, go ahead.
Certainly, thank you. And I guess one thing I'll mention is we did look at, on the next page after this one, a way to balance, because we have more requests than what's available. And one thing, there are many ways to, you know, assuming we keep all the bonds, balance what we need to, but one thing we took off was the mowers as a suggestion. And there are many ways to do that, to come up with 1.86, and that number is likely different today after the feedback we've heard of some projects that can fall off, some different requests, so we're going to need to fix everything there. I will say that's something I'm certainly happy to look into. I did it for the airport with an audit last year, and we can look into the golf course. I will say that the state auditor over the last few years had asked if the county has any sense of reporting from the golf course as far as their revenues that come in. Previously, I was not apprised of that information, but they did cooperate with me when I asked them directly, and they provide that now, and I'm glad that they do. So that's something I'm happy to look into as far as what that could be. Now, I will say it's a little, at least comparing to other municipalities or entities that have public golf courses, it's a little different in that it's on Smithville Lake, and then we have a lease. So that's one thing to consider. But I know it is, just from research, that it is a challenge those entities with golf courses have is just the nature of the sport and where it's going, and then a question of, is it worthwhile? So absolutely, it's an interesting question. I'm happy to explore.
First of all, thank you very much for that. I think you looking into that would be fantastic and would be a great service to the county, so I'm grateful for that. Thank you. Very briefly, you mentioned that we lease the land, right? And so if at some point we did decide, and I'm not proposing that we have this conversation today, but if we decided we no longer wanted to operate the golf course, own the golf course, would we receive any money at all for selling the golf course, or not?
Go ahead. You have some thoughts.
I'd say to Mr. Graham, we are, at least as a whole, as the golf course and the parks, so I don't believe that would be a feasible thing to do.
To do
As
what?
a
I'm sorry.
whole, to sell that one piece, I don't think that's possible.
Yeah,
Is
I think
am
that's
I
right.
correct?
We have an overall lease at the lake. We couldn't just sell off that or walk away from that element of the lease and get a credit. Probably the most we could do would be consider, with court approval, subleasing the courses to maybe a private vendor.
Right.
So for example, right now we have, the golf course managers out there is a private vendor that runs the clubhouse and all that. It certainly is possible that could be expanded if a taker in the private market wanted to do that.
Part of the reason I ask, and thank you, is as we invest an increasingly number of millions of dollars of the COP funds into it, the fact that we don't own the land just gives me even more hesitation to invest additional millions of dollars of taxpayer money into it if there's not an ownership stake that we can then recoup that money if we were to go sell it. Now, I guess it would probably get us a better lease deal if we were to sublet it out to if it's in better shape, I guess we could charge more money. So
I think there are some options, as was just discussed, the possibility of having a private entity while we would still retain, obviously, our investment in it. But I think this would be a good discussion for us to have, but in the interest of time and honoring the commitments, let's go ahead and go back to the items that we had talked about. I think however that argument goes, I have a high level of confidence that that what is being presented to us as far as what is required to keep the golf course in good operating order is the best course forward. So right now we're discussing budgeting, not necessarily policy questions, which I think are good.
well,
ones to have.
and I appreciate that, but we are talking about putting hundreds of thousands of dollars more into the golf course, right? And so are we making that decision today? Is that the plan?
Well, I'm not saying we couldn't have it concurrently. I'm just saying today is probably not the day to have it.
No, I know, but are we going to move forward with decisions on these line items today? Is it?
No, I don't anticipate any particular decision
Okay.
being
Well,
made
yeah,
whatsoever.
thank you. So Victor, for example, you've mentioned that you're taking guidance from this conversation and you're going to make adjustments from this, right?
Absolutely, and I think the idea is that we come back later, depending on the status of the bonds, to then have votes.
Right.
Absolutely, and so we need some updates.
Right.
Yeah.
So this conversation about what we do with this, like just take these $250,000 projects, right? Based upon this conversation, you are probably going to leave those in. Is that the?
Unless there's a strong commission.
Right. So I guess just in that vein of things, it does feel like we're sort of making the decision right now as to whether these are staying in or not. And I'm not saying we absolutely should take them out. I'm just saying it's a lot of money to keep pumping this kind of money into the golf course, and
But today is informational, and the only really decision we're making is to come to a consensus to task staff to come back to us with additional information. That's really about the only decision point that we have, and that's not really a vote.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Thompson, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. So I do have some shared concerns with the golf course and putting additional money into it, as Commissioner Carpenter has pointed out. Maybe moving forward, when we clean up this a little bit, we can get a breakdown again of all of what we have put into the golf course, so we can see. Because I believe, haven't we bought mowers out there? Haven't we already used COP money to do this? I'm sorry, I think I have the quiet microphone today. So I was like, haven't we already put money into mowers out there at the golf course? I feel like some of these are they not repeat or?
Well, they have, but from what I take when I was up there, that they had put money into mowers, but they only put mowers, just a small amount instead of just doing it all. I don't know why they didn't finish it out. I have no idea. But the mowers that they got set aside, and again, asking them, they were ran by the other department heads, that those pieces of equipment that they set aside are set aside for a reason, and they only use them if one of the others break down, but they hate to use them for the idea that something's going to happen to them out on the course, and then they got to drag it all back in. That's how I took it as. Why they didn't finish what they were doing, I don't know.
Okay,
That
yeah.
all came from, like I said, Nicole and Brad Garrett.
Okay. I think that we'll probably just need to see the breakdown of what has already currently been spent for like out on the golf course, some of these things, and we can compare. I'm hesitant on some of these things as well, so I know fellow commissioners feel the same way. Again, I might have missed it, but the highlighted in pink, do we know what that represents?
So yes, Commissioner, those are suggestions as a way to balance all the requests. Certainly that can be adjusted, and so I'm hearing some good feedback today. I think one last thing I'll mention is that we did not select projects 415 and 416 as rescue plan eligible initially. There might be a path. I need more information, however, so that might be something else to look at. This is federal dollars to federal land. As far as that one's a little different as to things going into the lake versus coming out of it. But We'd have to review that more. That might be a stormwater type issue. I just need more information on that. So,
Yeah, that's the purple ones.
so the purple are the rescue plan
Yes.
eligible.
I was just referring to the ones that are like shaded in pink a little bit.
Yes, so on your next page, those are the ones we came up with as an idea or way to balance
Okay.
the overall request, and that can be adjusted. You just got to make the math work. Yep.
Okay.
Commissioners, I feel like this is a pertinent piece of information that I should be giving you based upon some of your conversations. I need to confirm the actual date, because it's escaping me at the moment. But we have a 30-year lease on the lake, and we are in like year 15 of a 30-year lease. That was brought to my attention a couple of months ago, suggesting that if we want to continue, we need to start the process at some point in the near future as to whether we want to renew again. It's quite a lengthy process, but based upon your conversations, I think you need to know that we're about halfway through the current lease. And I will confirm the actual date for you prior to your 2 o'clock meeting.
Any further questions, Commissioner Thompson?
I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, excuse me, Mr. Arthur, did you have any other comments before we round off the meeting?
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments from the deputy administrators? Okay. That concludes our discussion item. And I'll run through these rather quickly. Public hearings, we have none listed. We have no consent agenda items. We have no regular agenda items. Comments on non-agenda items. Members of the public, I see none. Office holders, I see no comments. Other agency comments on non-agenda items? I see none. County Administrator, do you have any comments? Comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Thompson?
None, thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter?
No, thank you.
I also have no comments. Approval of minutes of previous sessions, there are none listed. Written reports? No written reports at this time. I will entertain a motion for us to go into executive session, which would commence at 2 p.m. The address being 16 West Franklin due to our air conditioning situation. Is there a motion related to going into executive session?
I move that we go into executive session.
Motion has been made to go into executive session after recessing here. That would begin at 2 o'clock. The address would be 16 West Franklin, and that would be under contractual Resmo 610-021, parentheses 12. Is that a restatement of your?
Thank you, yes.
Any comment? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Aye, yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes?
Thank you. We will then re-adjourn at 2 p.m. at 16 West Franklin for executive session. Thank you.